Well, today on In My Life, I'm delighted to be joined by the very wonderful Miss Chris Odell. Chris, how are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. And the first of your selections today takes us back to the 1st of August, 1968, and the very first track to be released on the Beatles' new Apple record, Hey Jude. So, what are your memories of that particular session? Because I understand that you were personally requested to join in on the refrain by Paul McCartney.
I was personally requested because I happened to be sitting around. if He needed voices, and they were putting on the chorus. And so he came up to the control room to talk to George Martin and just said, "Come on, we need you. Come on down." Because the studio is downstairs. So we went downstairs, and there were some people from the orchestra. And I'm not remembering if Linda was there that night, if it was at that time or not. But anyway, there was another female, whether it was Linda or Francie Schwartz, who was another Apple girl, friend of Paul's. And my first thing was, ooh, I better not sing very loud because I don't think I sing in tune. I have absolutely no trust in my voice. So I was kind of quiet, but then you couldn't help it. You had to get involved. You just had to sing because it was like a big happy party in a way. And I mean, we had no idea what it was going to end up sounding like, but we did it more than a couple times, that's for sure. And then later, of course, people think that the chorus was done when they did their TV show in England. They were all around Paul playing the piano, and that was the chorus. But in fact, it wasn't. I think actually they were playing the record. I think they were playing the record in the background. I think they were lip syncing, but I'm not sure.
That was recorded at Twickenham by Michael
Right.
Lindsay Hogg. Were you
Right.
there at the filming of that?
No, I was
You
in
were on the record. You didn't need to be there for the
I
filming.
no, actually I was in Ireland at the time getting my work permit sorted out. So that's the reason I probably wouldn't have been there anyway. But yeah, who needed to be at the TV show?
And I believe the overdubs were done after after Paul and George had a little bit of a disagreement. Were you aware of what had gone on before you joined them in the studio?
Not at all. I've never even heard this before. Do tell.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, apparently, George was suggesting that he lay down a few licks as a reply to Paul's lyrics, and Paul said, "No, it's not going to go down this way." And they had quite a big bust up. There was a film crew recording in EMI where they did the rehearsals before it was recorded at Trident. And you don't see George in the studio with John, Paul, and Ringo. You see him in the control room with George Martin.
Uh-huh.
And clearly it was all sorted out and resolved by the time they came to record it. But there was a few heated words going on. And of course, it was all in the middle of the White Album sessions, of which you were also a part. You were involved in a few of those sessions as well.
That was about the time I came to Apple. In fact, they just started recording it not long after I arrived at Apple. So I just thought it was normal to ask Paul to go in the studio. That just seemed normal. Here I am, they're working. Why can't I go in the studio? But the other girls who work there said, no, 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 we don't do that. We don't do that. There's a rule that we don't socialize with them. And I thought, what a stupid rule. So anyway, in the end, I did end up in the studio that night, not because of Mal Evans, he wouldn't let me in, but because of John's friend Peter Shotton, who had been in his original band. And so Pete said, "You want to come in the studio?" And it so happened that I think they were doing Revolution #9. I've never looked to make sure, but I know that John and Yoko came down, and John said, "Come on, we're going to put some hand claps on this." So I hand clapped on that one. So really, that was my first Beatle record.
I should imagine Pete Shotton was very entertaining. I understand that John Lennon once hit him over the head with his washboard.
Exactly. In fact, Pete told me about that. Pete was a really lovely guy, and they were very good friends. Very good friends.
You did very well to get past the Man Mountain, who is Mal Evans, and there's also a biography coming out about Mal. I think it was published last week. I've yet to
Well,
read it, but
I'm reading it.
what's it
I
like?
am. Oh, actually, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, up to now, I haven't read anything of where I was actually around, so I can't say, oh, I don't remember it that way. But I am actually enjoying it. It's honest, and I like that.
One of the things I read about the Hey Jude sessions was that the Beatles specifically asked for the studio manager at Trident to arrange for some marijuana plants to be put around the studio to soften up the studio. Were they in evidence, or were you just so overawed by the occasion that you didn't notice?
I was pretty overawed by the occasion, let me tell you. Yeah, I didn't notice that, never heard it. But you know what? I don't know nearly as much as a lot of people do about the Beatles. I was just there. I only know what I saw with my eyes, or heard with my ears. But I'm always amazed at how many more stories there are out there that I have no idea about. So that's a good one. Thank you.
Well, there were enough stories to last a lifetime, but I would certainly rather have been there than read about it. That's for sure.
Oh, well, there is that.
So for your second selection, we're going forward to the 30th of January, 1968, and you happen to find yourself on the rooftop at Savile Row for the filming and recording of, amongst other songs, Get Back. I understand you got on the roof through Tony Richmond. You were his assistant cameraman for the day.
Exactly. Bless his heart. Forever grateful. Yeah, we were told we can't go up there. Employees got a memo saying we weren't allowed to go up because of the building, the state of the building. And Tony Richmond popped by my office because I was on the top floor and said, "Are you coming?" I said, "No, we're not allowed up there. Only essential people." That was the word, essential. And he said, "Well, you're coming. You can be my assistant." Like, oh, okay, why not? So I went up. He put me in that nice little seat right next to his camera, which turned out to be only one of 4 seats that people were able to sit in to watch it. That was pretty special.
And you were sitting next to Maureen, and next to Maureen was Yoko.
Well, actually, I was next to Ken Mansfield, who worked for
Ah,
Capitol Records, or he did Apple in America. And he came up next, and poor guy, it was so cold up there, and he went down the street to buy a jacket, and it was nothing more than this flimsy little jacket. So he was freezing. He was wearing a white jacket. And then Maureen came in, and then Yoko came in. And we were there, the 4 of us.
well, you look absolutely frozen, as do the boys. I'm amazed that John was able to wrap his fingers around the guitar, and Paul in particular, because he wasn't wearing much.
That's exactly right. He didn't seem that cold. That's so weird. He had a light jacket on. Everybody else was bundled up, but not him. It was
I
cold.
get, I guess there was a lot of adrenaline flowing that day.
There definitely was a lot of adrenaline flowing. It was at the time, I don't know that I didn't expect it to end up being such a big deal. It was, oh, okay, they can't decide where to go, so they're going on the roof. Yay. What a good idea. It's right here. We don't have to go anywhere. And and yet everybody said the last time they played together. Well, of course it wasn't, because they went right downstairs to the studio and continued recording. So, yeah, it was a pretty special day though.
Was there any sense that they knew that this would be the last live public concert that they would give?
I don't know the answer because I wasn't there. I think that I'm just, from my own perspective, I think that they figured it was going to be filmed for this documentary that they were going to put out. And it was that simple. I don't know that anyone thought beyond that. But again, I wasn't privy to those conversations. So.
But when they performed Get Back, not a complete surprise for you because you actually had typed up the lyrics beforehand.
Yes. That actually was shocking. I had gone in early. I would go in and help out. I didn't have a life other than Apple because I didn't, I had all my friends were from Apple at that point. So I would, whenever they were recording on weekends, I would go in case they needed anything, help with the meal or help with typing lyrics. And Mal came up and said to me, and I had just dropped acid with Frankie Hart, and I don't know who, I can't remember who else was there, but we had just dropped acid. And a little later, I wasn't that high, but Mal came up and said, would you type up these lyrics? So I went, oh God, I hope I can type. So I went into the room next door where a typewriter was, and I sat down and I started typing the lyrics. And when I got to Jojo left his home in Tucson, Arizona, which wasn't very far down, get back, I went, oh my God, they're telling me to leave. They don't want, this is the way, like as though they were going to write this song just to tell me to leave. But in my kind of acid head, I was convinced they were telling me I had to leave. So they'd never said anymore, and I assumed I was wrong.
Did you ever mistype any of the lyrics and they actually got adopted as a final version?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think so. I didn't mistype.
No, of course not. But if you were on acid, maybe there might have been a little bit of.
It is kind of amazing that I was able to type on acid. It is kind of amazing. Yeah.
And
But
reference to. Sorry.
no, go ahead. I was going to just say those were the days when we were all kind of playing around with acid a bit. So I don't think it was very good because I don't think I could have possibly typed them if it'd been very good acid.
So the reference to Tucson, Arizona, did that come via yourself or did it come via Linda?
I think, and again, I have to speculate on this, but Linda and I connected the first night that I met her was really right after she'd arrived in London. And we went back to Trident. We were in a Chinese restaurant. It was a James Taylor session. And she and I went back and we started talking and realized I said, yeah, I was from Tucson. And she said, I love Tucson. It's my favorite place. She started her photography there and she went to the University of Arizona. So we connected on that. And so we talked about it. It would come up often that we would mention Tucson. In the Get Back film, he looks as though, it just came out of nowhere. But it's kind of hard to imagine that since Tucson was heavy on the on the brain at that time.
Yeah, and Linda, of course, isn't on the roof, but she does appear in the control room downstairs. So where was she on the morning of the when they actually all got on the roof? Do you know what happened?
I didn't even know she was in the building until I saw the film, this latest documentary. I just didn't even think about whether she was there. Patty didn't come, and actually Maureen and Yoko were the only two. So Patty and Linda weren't there. But I just thought, well, I guess they didn't want to come. That was my thinking. As it turned out, she was there, and Patty did want to come.
So why didn't she?
She said George told her there would be it wasn't an audience. It wasn't going to be like that. It was just them on the roof, and that he didn't see any other people being there. And in fact, he was right, because the only people that were actually up there were the crew and the four of us sitting there and a few of like Peter Brown and a few people who came out. Eventually, some of the other employees kind of snuck up, but the rest of it were all people from the neighborhood climbing out of windows.
And what was the feeling when the police officers finally joined you all on the roof?
My memory is that we knew that was going to happen. In fact, I noticed in the film there's even a cubicle set up with a camera inside of it. I think that was no surprise. They were right down the street. We figured that was going to happen. So it didn't really, my memory is I kind of went like, oh, there they are.
Did you fear that you might have been arrested?
No, I don't think anyone thought that at the time. I certainly didn't think that. But since that time, I've been making a documentary for the past year, since last January. And we actually interviewed the policeman, Ray Daggett, for it. So there's a lot more of his story in that, about what was going on that I wasn't privy to at that time.
I look forward to seeing that documentary and to hearing Police Officer Dag and his comments for the day. That sounds absolutely
Exactly.
fantastic. And obviously, Peter Jackson did a fantastic job restoring and re-editing and making a completely new documentary out of Let It Be. What were your thoughts watching that movie and looking back at your younger self?
Oh, it was like watching a home movie. It was so bizarre. But I got there right away. I was there, and seeing myself on it was, I think it had a much bigger effect on my son than it did on me, because he didn't know me at that age. So it was kind of like, whoa. But it was absolutely so full of memories. I mean, it just brought back so many memories and such a good feeling. And, other people who were involved at that time, who were around at that time, have the same feelings that I do, that somewhere between the first one, the Michael Lindsay Hogg film, and the second one, somewhere in the middle lies the truth.
Well, I think Michael Lindsay Hogg did a great job. And I mean, all the footage that's being used by Peter Jackson was shot by Michael and his team.
Right, but Michael's was pretty honest and told, not that the second one wasn't, but it had a darker feel to it. And I think a lot of people have felt that way, that they're like, it wasn't good, then they broke up, where Peter Jackson is kind of up and happy and, take all the years into account. But in reality, it was somewhere in the middle. So that together they make a perfect, kind of really a perfect picture of what that was like.
I think what didn't help was it wasn't intended to be a feature film to begin with, and it was shot on 16mm film, which doesn't blow up very well, and it had this dark, glooming, depressing sheen to it, despite whatever else.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
the final result was absolutely fantastic. I've watched it through several times. I don't know how many times you've watched it, but it's up to 9 hours, isn't it? So.
You know what? I watched it once. Well, you know what I did? I was very popular that week in Tucson, and people said, come to my house and have dinner and watch this one. So I was busy for 3 nights or 4 nights, whatever it was. But I realized after the first time, I thought, I really want to watch this myself. So I would watch it before I'd go to somebody else's house, because I'd miss it because they'd be talking and everything. But after that, I couldn't go through it again. My sister wanted me to watch it with her this last summer, and we did. We made it through one, but it's a lot.
It's a lot, but the fans have been going over and over again through every sort of second of footage and enjoying it. And we're actually disappointed that we only have 9 hours. We want more.
Of course. I'm like going, oh, this is so long.
I'm sure there's more of you on the cutting room floor as well as John, Paul, George, and Ringo on the cutting room floor as well.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I don't know if there's a lot more of me on there. The roof, I mean, obviously I was on the roof, so I was in a lot of things there. But I think there was a scene where I bring Mal the lyrics that I had typed up. And then there was another scene where Linda and I were lying on the floor with Heather and talking. And those were, I was down there a lot, but I don't remember. I thought I was well represented. Let's put it that way.
It's a great shame that they didn't credit you on the film, though. I think everyone else had a name check at some stage.
Yes, they did. And, my immediate assumption was that I wrote a book. Because even though they tell you, and I've read, even in Mal's book, it says, Ringo said, as long as you tell the truth, it's okay. So I wrote a book and I told the truth. And apparently that wasn't okay. So, there could have been some anger about that, but I really put it, I mean, the response from Apple was that I wasn't on screen long enough for it. So,
Right.
what the heck, I was there. I knew I was there. Other people have told me they knew I was there. So that's okay.
Well, you were definitely there in all your glory. We can see it in glorious
Yeah.
Technicolor. And for your third and final selection, we go forward 2 years to April 1971. George is alone, I think, in his rented house in Malibu, waiting for you to arrive. And that inspires him to write Miss Odell, which is the B-side of Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth, one of his biggest selling tracks. So I don't know how many million people bought that in the US. It was his follow-up to My Sweet Lord. It was #1. So I'm guessing a lot of people must have bought that track and wondered who the hell was Miss Odell, because that was the first time they would have heard of you.
That's absolutely right. They did wonder. In fact, after a few people knew, when I was on tour with George, I'll never forget, we'd arrived in Boston, and that was in 74, 75, 74, I think. I'm not sure. But and a girl walked up to me in the lobby of the hotel while I was getting the room keys and said, "Could I have your autograph?" And I'm like, "Whoa, that's never happened before." But as time went by, people began to figure out that I was real. But I was also the mystery woman on the back cover of the Stones' Exile on Main Street. So I was kind of not a real person for quite a long time.
It's a very warm, happy song as well. You must have brought out the best in George, and it shows his high regard for you, I feel.
It was absolutely, it's a gift of, I mean, I don't, at the time, I was so shocked that he would do that. I mean, there was no reason. It's like, usually you get a song written with you in relation to you because of a relationship, you know, and our relationship was totally, we were just friends. So, I thought, well, it's a good thing I didn't rush out there and I gave him time to think about writing this song.
It pays to be late sometimes.
Sometimes it pays to be late, but he sang it for me a few times after that, which was the best I ever heard it, obviously. And he did tell me that Capitol wanted to release it as the A side. Can you believe it? Over "Give Me Love," because it showed a more human side of him.
Yeah, they retain the early take when he breaks down laughing.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting that went out. He did, of course, record a straight version,
Hmm.
which appeared on Living in the Material World on the DVD that was
Oh,
released.
they did the straight version on there.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I
There's
never
there's
heard
two
it.
versions out there now officially, no longer on bootleg. It's all official now.
Yeah, he gave me a acetate of the two, and I've still got it somewhere in all my stuff.
I hope you got it safe in an air-conditioned room somewhere.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I
But
suppose. Yeah,
of course,
actually, yeah,
it
go ahead.
wasn't recorded until I think a year later with just Klaus and Jim Keltner on the recording. I
Hmm.
think Jim Keltner's on lead cowbell.
As he rightly should be.
Where were you at that stage a year
Well, they did
later?
that in London, so I wasn't around. But I mean, when you listen to it, you see, actually, it was pretty unusual for him to keep laughing, and they kept recording. That was actually kind of amazing if I think about it. So yeah, that was good. Actually, I was flying on one of the airlines from London back to the States one year, years ago, and Miss Odell was under comedy records, under the comedy section. Okay, on the airline thing where they list
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
and it said Miss Odell under comedy, and I went, okay, why not? It
Well, it's. I
was
mean,
a little odd.
the first verse addresses war and famine, so that's not exactly normal comedic material. But
Not exactly.
it's a great arrangement, though, with George on harmonica, and it does give a nod to maybe the time he spent with Dylan.
Oh, he was very much into Dylan at that time. In fact, if you really pay attention during a certain period of time, his voice became more Dylan-esque. You could hear it. I think that probably happened on All Things Must Pass even. You could hear that Dylan-esque influence.
But it must have been great for you to hear that song for the first time with George's voice and acoustic guitar, with no production, no sort of vinyl between you and George, just hearing it pure and authentic from him.
He was sitting right next to me on the couch. He said, "Oh, I almost forgot. I've got something for you." This is after we'd had dinner and talked and did all the gossip. And he went and got his guitar and came back. And I'm like, oh, God. And I have to admit, I was embarrassed. I didn't even know what to say. You know, it was like, oh, okay. But today I'm very grateful to have it.
And what was Patty's reaction when she heard a song written about another woman?
Well, I have asked her that question. She has answered it. At the time, he played it when they were before Bangladesh concert, when they were in LA, and he played it one night in the living room, and she just said, "Oh, that's so sweet." So she's never told me otherwise. We had a deal.
Chris, thank you very much for joining us today. We've enjoyed the time with you, and thank you for making those 3 selections on In My Life. Take care, Chris. All the best. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.